Hello, I'm Stephanie Foster, and for my second book report, I chose to do Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So, Kahneman breaks up our brains into two different systems, and system one is our subconscious part of the brain that is emotional and quick with processing and reacting to information. The system is automatic and takes little to no effort, but it can also lead to jumping to conclusions or irrational decision making. So, one example of this that Kahneman used was with facial expressions. We have an almost immediate reaction when we see a person's facial expression, and we start to assess their mood and forecast what they might do next. So if we think that they're angry, we might think that they're going to start shouting or yelling at someone. But even though this may not be intentional to assess their moods or forecast what they're going to do next, it is our immediate reaction from system one in our brain. And we also see this reaction in other things like finishing common phrases. Like when you hear bread and, you automatically know that the end to that sentence is butter. Um, Solving simple math equations, 2 plus 2, you automatically know it's 4 without even thinking about it. Or even driving a car in no traffic, you don't have to think about operating the vehicle because it's just such a common thing for you to do. These are all just very common occurrences that are automatic with little to no effort involved. So system two is the other way our brain processes information. This system, on the other hand, is much slower and it needs to assign our attention to the mental activities that are in need of it. So this system requires us to slow down and put more effort into our thinking, but the system can also lead to better decision making instead of just our instinctive, which may sometimes be irrational thinking. So the system is required when we're doing things such as investing our money. This isn't just an instantaneous thing. You need to research your options and consider where you're going to be investing your money. Also, when you're filling out more difficult forms, such as filling out a college application or a tax form, again, this is something you need to think about. Reciting your phone number, while you may know it by heart, it's something you need to think about and you need to find in your memory. You can't just spit it out without thinking about it. Or even when you're walking faster than normal, this causes you to put more effort into thinking about what you're doing rather than just walking at your normal pace. So these are all events that are no longer automatic for our brains, and they require us to slow down and start to pay attention to our situations. So while these systems are made up of different characteristics, they do work together to produce results. So System 1 and System 2 do have the control of attention in common. So while System 1 may automatically direct your attention towards a system event, System 2 comes into play and they have the capability of altering how System 1 works. And they can typically, by using their automatic functions of your memory and your attention. So another major impact that Kahneman touched on was heuristics and biases. So these greatly impact how we think, and they often cause us to think irrationally. So these make it harder for us to think statistically or mathematically, and they can also cause us to jump to conclusions. So one heuristic that causes this way of thinking is priming. This priming can be triggered by words, even if we're hungry or not, because if we're hungry, it's going to kind of prime us to thinking about food, or if we're tired, it's going to prime us to think about sleep and other things that have to do with sleep. Or it may even be a past event that we don't even realize are causing us to have this priming bias. Another bias that greatly impacts our decision making is the anchoring effect. This is a result of being greatly influenced by previous information that may be irrelevant. So, for example, in one experiment, if the test subjects are given a low number and then told to guess a number of something, their answer is going to be anchored much lower than they were originally given a high number as their anchor. So, this is also true while driving. People may think that they're going fast through town at 30 miles per hour if they were just driving 15 miles per hour through campus. However, the speed of 30 miles per hour would seem very slow if they were driving on the highway right before entering the 30 mile per hour zone. Another heuristic that causes us to think differently is hindsight illusion. So oftentimes we look back in the past and think that we understood it, and then therefore we think that we can almost predict future events, whereas this is almost never the case. So one event where this is extremely common is with financial bubbles. No one sees them coming because if people were to see them coming, then it would be most likely that they would be avoided. But after they happen, a lot of professionals and other analysts claim that they had seen the event coming. So in his book, Kahneman states, those with the most knowledge are often less reliable. And this is often because when one gains so much knowledge and becomes very skillful in one area, they often become victim to these biases and they become very overconfident with their abilities. So another very important part of the book was when he talks about prospect theory. So this is an area that Kahneman specializes in. He won a Nobel Prize for this particular topic in economics. So in economic models, it was typically assumed that decision making is solely reliant on money and the value of money. But Kahneman kind of changed this theory and explained that it can be altered by two main things. So one is it's not so much the value of money that should be considered, but as important, or it should be more considered of what value or experience that money will bring to the person who is receiving it or losing it. And then the second one, which is the main one, is the loss of money hurts way more than the gains feel good. So, System 1 allows us to compare the benefit of winning against the cost of losing money. And the fear that's linked in with this losing money also holds precedence in our decision making and then causes us to be loss adverse. So, we often do as much as possible to avoid losing rather than actively seeking gains. I also wanted to quickly touch about the last part of his book where he kind of divides and discusses us as our two selves. So, the two selves are our experiencing self, and the other is our remembering selves. And the one significant thing about these two selves is they can alter how we experience pain versus how we experience pleasure from time to time. So the main takeaway that Kahneman found was our remembering self would rather choose more pain for a longer duration of time and then at the end be fine rather than a short period of pain that ended dreadfully. Because at the end, we're going to remember the dreadful experience rather than um, it ending fine. Because our remembering self holds on to the memory of what happened for a lot longer than our experienced self.